Two, one, two. Check 1 2 1 2 1. Check, 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 check. 1 2. Check 1 2 1 2 1 2. Check, check, check. 1 2. Excellent.
Good morning. Good morning. That was like a straggled, like table by table. So good morning. Whew. I looked at our agenda and then I looked for Leno. And I was like, okay, I guess I got some work to do. Well, thank everybody. And Kathy had a really good suggestion. Well, two. Before this even was over, and we're close to being over, about a week ago, she was like, oh yeah, you know what? We got to start planning for next year. I was like, planning for next year, can you let us get to this year, please? Without that. So here we are. And then the other thing was, she had a real push to like flip the script, equaling that the things that we did last year at the end that we needed to do at the beginning. So we kind of altered that so that like a lot of the addresses that we did on, when do we start? Wednesday? Wednesday, and then Thursday. So a lot of the script changed like that. First person I saw that I needed some help from this morning was your brother. Going to the elevator because I got Rudy's guitar, got all my stuff. And I'm trying to figure out how can I get all this done. And he helped me, him and his wife. And so like, I like confirmation that, because confirmation equals as we're going through whatever it is that we're going through, if we see the embodiment of certain spirits, things that, God puts in our life. And I was so pleased with Antoinette having brought her brother, to help us. I was just like blown away. So if there was anything that I needed to see first thing this morning, that was it. Because, yeah. Oh man, hey, well, I don't know about the sister, but I know about the brother. No, yes, that's true, because you have stuck it out. Well, my joke with Antoinette has been, "Oh, you back for another dose?" Because it's been not in a very positive way. It's been a challenge for all of us. And then to see the brothers, from Chicago, Rudy and I went up to their event. And that event probably had, 10,000 people of union organizers throughout the country. And they had a representation from Amazon and Mr. Coffee Place, Starbucks. And they were highlighted because they were beginning to do some things in those two corporations that hadn't been done before. And we learned about, I learned about, what is it, the braceros. And it was so heavy, it was so deep, to comprehend, that what has happened with labor, how intense has it been, and how in certain arenas, that the laborers have not received rewards. And so we learned about that, and these brothers are here at the table back there. So to see them here participating with all of what we're doing, and then the youth, all the corporations, both public and private sector that are here, USDA, it has just been tremendous. Now I don't get up past 5 in the morning because I gotta catch Rudy before he gets out the door. So that means I gotta be up at 3. I slept till 6:45. I rolled over at 6:45. What didn't happen? You know what I mean? So the challenge, and then I felt like, you know, if there are not challenges that we meet and address, then we don't rise to the occasion. So as we're rising to the occasion, you know, the things that we are encountering along the way, they have been major. So if I sleep till 6:45, it's like, man, what a challenge, you know, that I've been, and I'm sure everybody else has experienced some of those same things. So we want to truly, truly thank you, you know, from all of us at National Latinos for the work, you know, that has been put in. Travis, we trusted you 150%. You know, and the artists, you know, Rudy just told me he had some people that could handle a lot of kids. I was like, well, they got it, because all the part that we have to do was to make sure that the facility was ready. You know, and I was like, man, I'm not, I don't even want to think about 200 young people with young people's energy, you know, with everything else we got to do. So when we just said, hey, man, handle it, and you handled that, you don't know how that makes us feel, you know, in terms of what comes next. So we're looking forward, you know, I mean, every section here has been designed to come up with what's next, and there are challenges there. And we're looking forward to hearing what these resolutions are this morning so we can set the pattern for the work that we're going to have to do. And I'd really miss Leno, because we're just going to have to make it through. Now, there's been a guy that I've been hearing about, and I think that Rudy would be the best person to introduce our keynote for this morning, because you know him so well. So if you would come up and do that.
Me? No, no. So, buenos dias. Good morning, everybody. Hey, let's wake you up bright and early. Uh, I see some people calling me still in. Are you start? Yeah, we're already ready to go. So anyway, I just it's a distinctive honor and a pleasure to introduce to all of you one of my dear friends and colleague that we worked together. We met during, we were invited to be a part of this Agree Advisory Committee, and he was one of the advisors, so was I, and many others, and we maintained this, you know, friendship and working relationship over the years. And I have been trying to get him to, you know, he's a very, very busy man in California. And he also happened to be the Secretary of Agriculture in California under Governor Schwarzenegger. So we are, you know, it's a great pleasure to me to introduce to you AG Kawamura. Yes, a wonderful man with a lot of knowledge. So listen to what he has to say, particularly in the Central Valley in California. Welcome, AG.
Muy buenos dias. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Oh, there you go. Rudy, it's just such a pleasure to get to see you and observe and witness just the many, many years of work that you've put in to try and to make a difference in how this world sees agriculture and how we look at our future as well. I hope to at least talk today a little bit about, is the future for agriculture, is the glass half empty, is the glass half full? Are we in a dark ages of sorts, or are we actually coming through a renaissance period at the front end? And why would we think that is so? If it is so, why would that be the case? And so I'm going to try and get through this quickly. I know you guys have a lot to talk about, and I know there's a lot of incredible things taking place within agriculture, but a lot of challenging things. And for those of you who have been tremendously challenged, if you're dealing with drought, if you're dealing with flooding, if you're dealing with some of the problems with unusual or unpredictable weather, we know that's the case for all of us in agriculture always. But at the same time, how much better prepared are we today than we were 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, or 100 years ago? I just like to make this observation. My neighbor just retired. This is the man that taught me how to farm, but my neighbor just retired, about the same age, at 96 years old. He was born in 1925. And so he's 97 years old this year. In 1927, there were the global census said there were 2 billion people on the planet. Sometime is today. Still October it is, isn't it? And in a couple days, it'll be in November. In November, evidently the 8 billionth person will be born on this planet. So how is that possible? You go from 2 billion people in 1927 to 8 billion people here in 2022. And the problem with that is it kind of crept up on us all. There's just been so much progress, so much acceleration of different categories of tractors, from going from the horse and plow to autonomous satellite driven tractors. This one has a driver in it, but soon there's going to be in some places in many ways autonomous tractors driving around with no tractor driver inside of it. Is that for all of us? No. For those technologies that are out there that are available to the farmer, the rancher now, it still may be a decade or so before they even filter down. And this idea of a renaissance then is something that we want to say is a flow of knowledge, an explosion of understanding. And we hope that the challenges that we've experienced for those of us in agriculture, whether you're a farmer, rancher, whether you're a fisherman, those technologies that have been developing and giving us new tools into the toolbox, that toolbox continues to become more dynamic with every year. And we need those tools. We need all kinds of different tools and new understanding, along with the ancient and the old understanding from the past, because this is not going to be easy to feed 8 billion people on a planet if the unpredictability of weather, the unpredictability of supply chain, the unpredictability of governments that just kind of give you support and all of a sudden take that support away. These are all the kinds of issue areas that really haven't changed that much, but they're just, I think, a little more magnified now that we see the scope of how big this planet is with this many people on it. And yet maybe, and I'll talk about the pandemic, maybe it was things like the pandemic that help us focus a little bit on where our opportunities are and strengths, but more importantly, where our vulnerabilities lie. Feeding a planet is no easy task, but I would argue that since a little after World War II, for the first time in the history of mankind, we have the capacity to feed everybody in the world. We just don't have the will to do it. And more importantly, we don't have the imagination to get it done. And later today in this discussion with you, I hope to show you that with a little more imagination, we can recognize that we have all the resources out there to make sure everybody has a highly nutritious package of foods to work with every day, year after year. And then that should be a priority. This nutrition insecurity should not be something that we would ever experience, other than the dislocation that comes when you have a horrible earthquake or a hurricane or a famine and drought that takes place. But even with that, we have the capacity to make those changes to address the number one goal that comes on this deal. Number two goal here is the end of hunger on the planet. How many, just for I always like to ask the audience, how many people have seen and know what the Sustainable Development Goals are, just by a raise of hands? See, this is a higher percentage than most places I get to go to, and I speak in front of all kinds of audiences, whether it's a Chamber of Commerce, whether it's a bunch of agricultural folks. But the United Nations in the early 80s, 1985, came out with the millennial goals that by the year 2000, they were going to accomplish some different goals around the planet, like lowering death rates for child mortality at birth, raising the level of education. But there were goals that were somewhat modest, but they put them out there. And by the year 2000, amazingly, and this is the United Nations, all the nations agreed to those goals, the millennial goals. And in 2000, amazingly, the world had accomplished all of those goals. And so in 2015, a few years back, they came out with these sustainable development goals. And these 17 goals, hopefully to be accomplished by the year 2030, give a framework of a different kind of a world. And I use this slide because as we looked at it, many of us in agriculture, we took a hard look at these goals and we said, wait a minute, a lot of these goals have a lot to do with agriculture. In fact, 7 to 8 of them have a huge amount to do with agriculture. And you realized that two things: if we were actually able to accomplish these goals by the year 2030, the entire world would be different. And half the problems and the challenges and the fighting that you see, if we accomplish these goals by the year 2030, which is, oh, by the way, is only 8 years away, no small task. But if you accomplish them, the world would be different because of the way these goals, these sustainable development goals, are set up. But then you also realized, and this was maybe the more important point for many of us in agriculture, is that if agriculture is not doing well on the planet, if we're doing poorly, in other words, if we move from a world of abundance to a world of scarcity, and I like abundance, the word abundance, because with abundance, you have choices. And then when you're in a world of abundance, which I would argue we are right now, when I say we have the capacity to feed everybody on the planet, but we don't have the will to do it, the abundance that gives us these choices is something really important. But the minute you move from abundance and the ability to be in a situation of living, and we move towards scarcity, in scarcity, you start to move towards a world of survival. And in the world of scarcity, you also realize is you can't accomplish, many of these goals are not going to get accomplished. And so the importance of agriculture to this, and the importance of also having affordable water and affordable energy and available energy. Water, energy, and food become that nexus of, if you want an incredible world, then you better make sure we start working together instead of in our silos, and start to realize that each one of these areas has to be pulled together, and we work alongside each other in making these three components, water, energy, and food, the pillar that these sustainable development goals can stand on. And I see that there's some great opportunities, going back to what mentioning that the pandemic shook us out of our realities. I mean, we were all just disrupted in a way that we never thought was possible. And yet out of that disruption comes at least an analysis that we actually can do a lot of pretty amazing things. In our country, for example, during the pandemic, most of the places in the world, in the country, had disruption in your choices. You didn't get to complete scarcity. You didn't run out of things on the shelf. You just didn't have all your choices on the shelf. But there were certainly food deserts in our country there that were out of food, whether it was out at the Navajo reservation. And there's a neat project that took hold, the Farm to Family Food Box program, that was really pretty remarkable, that took hold during the pandemic. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. These windows of areas where we started to see where our vulnerabilities lie within our food system was very obvious for many to see. At the same time, for those of you who work with farmers markets, work with roadside small production, you started to see that there's a huge resurgence with local production, the local food shed, the farmers markets, that we were able to see, because guess what? We are essential services, essential workforce, essential activity. That that part of our food system, actually, I understand it today, and tell me if I'm not, I believe I'm correct when I say this, is had a tremendous upswing and resurgence, and they're doing better than they ever were pre-pandemic. So what does that mean? There's been an aha moment of understanding how vulnerable our food supply is. So as an example, when we hear about a drought, we could talk about a drought, whether it's here in the South, whether it's along the Colorado River, whether it's in California, where it's very serious. But a drought looks a lot different to different people. This is one of my ranches. It's on an active military base. In my farm, I farm in Southern California, out of Orange County. I'm in my 44th season, professional season. I can add 4 years of beekeeping on top of that. So I've been going through about 48 cycles of growing things. This was our cover crop that we grew. We had great rains in December this last year, and got our cover crop in, got it to germinate. And who would have guessed in January, February, March, there was zero rain, zero measurable rain. And these are my friends, our Canadian geese friends that come in every year. And without that rain, the grass could not outgrow the hungry geese. And the grass never grew any bigger than this, and they ate it all up. And so my cover crop concept and trying to get that organic matter back in just didn't happen because of the drought that we're in Southern California. On this same ranch, I have a well just to the left of where these geese are, that we had to shut down because of saltwater intrusion because we're right near the ocean. And so the drought's real. It is painstakingly obvious to many that we're not prepared well in California, let alone on the many states along the Colorado River, that we're watching an infrastructure that needs to be reestablished, reinvested in, and yet we're kind of dragging our feet, even though the crisis is facing us in our face. We know this is not Florida. This is actually a California freeze in the San Joaquin Valley from years ago. I took that picture. We understand that every year we have these, I guess the best way to put it is unpredictable weather means unpredictable harvest. And when you talk about climate change, many of us that had a chance to be participants in some of these different climate conferences, in fact, I'll be in Egypt in the next couple of days at the climate conferences, the dialogue with all these very intelligent, smart, educated folks, they're talking about the change of climate. None of them were talking 10 years ago about what happens with the global food supply if we're going to go through these tremendous swings in a changing climate. And so we realized that unpredictable weather means unpredictable harvest. Why wouldn't that be a major topic within a climate conference discussion? And sure enough, this year there is going to be quite a big discussion about, well, what is going to happen with a global food supply? But that's helped along by the war in Ukraine, by the pandemic that we just are coming out of, and this idea that the global food supply for the 8 billion people is pretty darn vulnerable. And you might think that we need to support agriculture and the farmers and the ranchers and the foresters a little bit better to make sure that we have this capacity to keep on feeding ourselves over time. I always have to say on this slide that we have tremendous gratitude for the marijuana growers of the world that helped give us a bunch of new technologies that could grow stuff indoors, inside a closet, inside with very little water, with no light, different light. But I laugh because who would have guessed that in the short term of 20, 30 years, for example, the California tomato industry, vine ripe tomato industry would be completely transformed from outdoors to indoors. And that's continuing to take place, whether it's lettuces. Some folks are trying to work with strawberries, and I'm a strawberry grower, but I'll wait and see when that happens at scale. But this idea that you can grow not only food on a square foot, but food on a cubic foot, this obviously is some of where the new opportunities come from many different kinds of commodities, many kinds of products, and more importantly, many kinds of scales of farms where you can maybe address the scale of volume in a small space with the kind of costs that we're seeing for the cost of water, cost of energy, especially if you can really dial in some of these new technologies as they mature or as they become over the shelf available. For all the greenhouse folks that, for example, I work with a guy out of Vancouver right now who has technology to reduce the cost of closed environment greenhouse, closed environment grow houses by reduce the energy requirement by over 50–60%. He's able to get rid of those big units on the side, the cooler and the refrigerator, the air conditioner and the heater on the sides, and just work with moving air through a facility and dealing with humidity and giving you a perfect temperature, whether it's for humans in houses or for a greenhouse. And that technology is spreading as we speak. We had a chance to look, I grow strawberries, but I grow in a very urban area. I'm an urban farm. People say, oh, you're a urban farmer. I'd like to say I'm a farmer in an urban area. And for years, we've been experimenting. Well, how can we grow on places that are unusual? How can we start to continue to try and do a little better job of what we've got, especially when we're paying close to $1,000 an acre foot for water in Orange County, even if it's reclaimed water, which we're lucky to have reclaimed water. And these hydroponic bags, grow bags, was a effort we had trying to do that on an interesting site. We were on a military base there that had been put out of commission. And this idea that what's feasible becomes possible. I love a quote that is one of my favorite quotes. It's a Mark Twain quote, and it's not the quote about whiskey and water. Though Mark Twain has a quote that says, "You can't trust your judgment if your imagination is out of focus." I'll say that again. You can't trust your judgment if your imagination is out of focus. And what happens when you put a new set of glasses on, you see differently, right? Your vision changes. And I think that's what this Renaissance picture is all about. Our vision is changing because we are seeing things through a different lens, and we see things through a different lens. We can see that there's new possibilities, new opportunities, and you start to recognize that the dynamics of new technologies pulled together help you understand that there's more ways to do things than you did it in the past. And that continues to be the case. When I mentioned that I'm an urban farmer, a farmer in an urban area, we've been leasing our ground. Our model in agriculture, my company, for 35 years, we've been farming on land that we lease. We always joke that I am a land manager with an edible landscape theme, because that's what we do. We take land that a landlord like the city of Irvine that inherited this El Toro Marine Base where they filmed Top Gun, and those are the airstrips there that were active just 20 years ago. But that's us farming in between the runways, and where land is available. For those of us that don't own the land that we farm on, don't ever think that you don't have opportunity, because there's tremendous opportunity. Because wherever the weeds are growing well, you know immediately that's probably a pretty good piece of ground. Might be 2 acres, 3 acres, might be 200 acres, might be anywhere in between, but there's opportunities. And now you have to look for a water source if you're going to irrigate it and you're in a dry area. But that becomes part of the problem, the opportunity for changing. So I'm going to play this 3-minute video, and this is a good example of having grown up in this area of Orange County for 3 decades. We've been, I hope I did this right, for 3 decades, we've been working with the food banks, dealing with gleaning, taking the leftovers and trying to get them into a food bank. As a farmer, I hate throwing away anything that I grow. And it just bothered us enough that we started working with the food banks over 35 years ago with active gleaning programs in our area. We have a lot of people in the region. This is Orange County near Disneyland, south of Disneyland. And yet at the same time, for all these years, for 25 years plus, we would grow 2 or 3 acres on little pieces around the area, kind of aggressive little mini gardens or mini farms, large gardens, mini farms for the food bank. And they loved it. But during the pandemic, we started to see that this enormous push for people that were in need, this enormous push for nutrient-dense foods that was finally coming to the forefront as an important part of diet. And then more importantly, the fact that there's opportunities that are in front of us. Let's see what this is. I'll go see. My name is A.G. Kawamura, and I'm a 3rd-generation farmer here in Orange County. My grandparents are all from Japan, and they came into the LA area turn of the century, the last century, stayed in business then. Now it's 75 years worth of family business. People talk about how many seasons you have under your belt. This is my 43rd year. Every year's different. Something different about our company from many others is it's been almost 35 years now where we've learned how to grow crops on pieces of property that we don't own. Land managers with an edible landscape theme. So I'm here at the University of California's South Coast Research and Extension Center. And behind me is just one of the several wonderful plots of land that are available for us for a project where we're going to custom grow food for the food banks of the county.
As a representative of Second Harvest Food Bank and the Orange County Hunger Alliance, I am thrilled at the progress of the Harvest Solutions Farm. Today, we are growing and distributing some of the most nutritious food in Orange County to those most vulnerable. As Second Harvest approaches its 40th anniversary, we are laser focused on not only tackling food insecurity, but nutritional insecurity. And what comes from this farm is amazing. It is amazing to those most in need. It is nourishing school children, and it is changing the future of food banking.
We have the capacity to feed everybody on the planet. Wouldn't that be something in my lifetime if we could see an end of hunger on this planet? Agriculture seems to be part of the solution set for what needs to happen on the planet. And we also see that there's these wonderful opportunities to try and kind of reestablish a presence for agriculture in an urban area that's not only innovative, but collaborative too. And of course, that's what this project has been all about.
What an amazing 12 months. We've had over 4,000 volunteers come to Harvest Solutions Farm to come together, volunteer, plant, weed, harvest, sweat, laugh, and deliver over 2 million pounds of produce to our community. And who would have thought 45 acres in the middle of Irvine? It shocks folks all the time. What a unique way to deliver fresh, nutritious produce to our community. We're serving as a blueprint to other food banks, and the community is only continuing to engage more and more.
This is a game-changing way of thinking about how we address hunger, not only in our country, but not only in our state, but certainly globally. Those most in need will be getting some of the greatest food ever, right off the farm, right into their homes.
On behalf of Harvest Solutions Farm and OC Produce, we would like to thank the following farms and farmers for their help when the crops just wouldn't wait. We'd like to thank Achandi Farms, Fujishige Farms, Manacero Farms, and the staff at the South Coast Research and Extension Center for their invaluable help during critical times. Thanks, guys. We couldn't have done it without you.
And so actually that was filmed earlier this last year. We're past we're approaching 2.7 million pounds and 6,000 volunteers on that program. And the amazing thing about that program is it's at the University of California's research station. A lot of that land was sitting idle for lack of a research project. Every single state in this country has university properties that are research and extension available. We know that the farm community is always ready to step up and help my fellow farmers. When not enough volunteers showed up to do critical activity, we just give them a call and they can throw in a crew of 5 or 10 folks that will come over and actually get the job done with volunteers, and it blows the volunteers away how a professional crew can really get work done, and they get that respect and that they deserve. And it's been the kind of a project that we could have done 30 years ago, but it just didn't have the imagination that we could pull this together and just say, well, we have a problem. It's nutrition insecurity. Let's just solve it. And so many of us have used this phrase, and I love this phrase, is we started to say that why would we continue to why would we still think that the think tank model is getting anything done? Let's become a do tank. And you can study, we have so many experts on food and nutrition. We have so many experts on water. We have so many experts on energy. You know, how many more studies do we need to show that a student that doesn't have enough to eat in the morning is going to be a good student? How many more studies do we need to learn about diabetes and all the other problems of a nutrient deficient diet? How many more studies do we need that if you don't have your infrastructure for water in place, you're going to suffer someday? How many more studies do we need to show that we have all kinds of energy opportunities in many different categories? So this is an abandoned golf course in that same area that turned out to be some of the best ground I've ever had a chance to farm on. It's all destined to go under asphalt. In fact, this field right now is under asphalt. But for us to have the opportunity to farm on it, we recognize that as a tenant farmer with this land management theme, we have to be very cognizant that the developer, the landlord, needs to do what they need to do on their property. And when this kind of property, specifically this piece, when the ground's worth $3 to $4 million an acre, you can imagine farming green beans on it is not necessarily the highest, best cost wise. It might be the highest, best noble thing to do on a piece of ground, but it is sad to see ground go under asphalt. That being said, it doesn't mean that all the landscaping in any city, in any region, in any park, in any area can't be food production, can't be an edible landscape. Our local nonprofit called Solutions for Urban Agriculture has a theme. We like to say there's edible landscapes everywhere, so there's hunger nowhere. I wanted to shift from that landscape to this landscape. This is called the headwaters of the Colorado River. Everybody knows that the infrastructure, whether it's in California, of the forest infrastructure that exists, that filters, that holds, that maintains biodiversity, maintains life, maintains moisture, maintains enormous population underground of the biome underground, is impaired. It's broken. There's been different studies, again, think tank studies that will tell you 70–80% of the Rockies has sick and dysfunctional forests. Same thing's happening in many of the forests of California, in the Sierras and north. And this idea that they're susceptible to everything from the disease and wildfires that we know, why would we think we need to study it anymore? Why wouldn't we be changing what we're doing and making a difference? Rudy and I have a wonderful friend, Pat O'Toole, who farms right here and ranches right here in this area. And he is showing us that where the forestry, the interior folks, the conservation districts, and the ranchers have come together, they've created beautiful, beautiful habitat and been able to restore and do restoration and afforestation and reestablish some of the best habitat, for example, the grouse, sage grouse, and many other animals. And this kind of partnership where you get a chance to see that there's a proof of concept that works, I think that's when we talk about Do Tank, is let's get those positive proof of concept projects that have shown that you can make results, make impact, and scale them up and replicate them everywhere we can. And let's see if we can't direct the dollars that exist everywhere to try and start to make a difference and some more impact in what it is we're trying to accomplish. And let me finish then by just saying that as we look at the future, this happens to be the former officers' housing at the El Toro Marine Base. They pulled off the asphalt, and underneath it was really pretty good ground. It was a little stale, but we had to get it back into gear. And this was a project called the Incredible Edible Park Farm on the Incredible Edible Farm on the Park, on the Great Park. But for about 5 years, we were able to produce food at this small scale here for the food banks. And maybe it's a little bit ironic, maybe it's a little bit a dynamic that can tell you that you can change things, we can change things, we are changing things. And more importantly, the times can't be lost on thinking that you can't make progress, that you can't make these things happen in a small time frame, because that's what's happening in the Renaissance. It's a tidal wave of new thinking. It's a tidal wave of new ways to do things, and more importantly, it's a change of will, because it embraces everything that we know all along, that we have the capacity and then the will and the imagination to make the world really pretty special. And if the government is going to help us do it, then we'll just do it ourselves. So with that, thanks, Rudy, for this opportunity to share some thoughts.
Thank you, AG. And one of the things that I would like to see if we can get your commitment to come and do this in our next conference that is going to be here about approximately the same dates. So we would love to have you, and because everybody's like getting ready to leave, but I know that was your schedule was really tight. But I can truly appreciate you taking the time to come and visit us before you take off for the higher level with the United Nations. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So yeah, we're gonna ask AG to put us on his calendar for next year's Congreso. And the other thing that I'd like to see if we can work on a lot of these trade agreements that need our input, and certainly in terms of the kind of techniques that AG has indicated with regard to the reuse of this urban agriculture areas that have not been really done or being considered in terms of being able to produce food. So thank you, AG. Mr. Pickett, it's all yours.
Is anybody in here under 50? Got it. We got some, okay. We got a few people under 50. Well, when you start getting over a certain age, when you go to the curb, you start thinking about stepping down like, oh man, I gotta step down that curb. You see, when you go up the stairs, you be looking like, oh wow, I'll go up the stairs. They ought to have an elevator in here. We should be on the first floor, you know. You start thinking differently. But he took me all the way back. Because every kid's dream was like to go to Orange County so you could go to Knott's Berry Farm or Disneyland. And I actually ended up going to school at Irvine. And back then there was only like 7,500 students there. And to see, you know, what is taking place now, there used to be orange groves, and you're talking about urban farming. I was like, whoa, was it that long ago? So, you know, we want to thank you again, AG. You know, that's a wonderful thing, wonderful thing. Okay. Sometimes, you know, the group that is hung in and stayed over, and we get down to the real work, because all the sections, and it's the unfortunate thing about what I end up doing, we have so much to do and so many people to get to so many places, and, you know, fill in, and where did somebody, they missed, or they missed the flight? How do we get somebody else to fill in? And we really have to know who everybody is. So when we're doing that, you know, it puts me in such a precarious position because I don't get to really be involved. You know, there's so much information is going on, and I only get to see like a tidbit. So the last day becomes very important because we want to hear what the resolutions are. And I always think that I know there's resolutions and I should know what they're going to be, but I never know what they're going to be. So we kind of get to this point that we are now. And it's not the stragglers, it's those of us who got up close to being on time. And then we stumble down here, and then there we are to finish up the real work. We have a real present for you, those of you who made it. The National Latinos Farmers and Ranchers and the Villa family, you know, came together and they sent us this message that the remaining items will be gifted to everybody that's in the room. These will be gifted. When we did these, our communication department, you know, figured out how to bring this. You won't even see this in a history book. So this as a gift is tremendous. And what legitimized this gift is because the Villa families and the Zapata families, for those that were signed or that they were here and they okayed us to do this, authorizes us to have this as a legitimate piece of National Latino Farmers and Ranchers. So you won't be able to, you know, like take a photo that looks like this out of a book because it was designed by our communications group. So this is very, very special. Those of you who were able to, you know, get a signature, I mean, this is a one in a lifetime item. So we want to gift these to you. Anna has these in the back. So at the end of the session this morning, the partnership between the Villas, the Zapatas, and National Latinos are gifting these to you. Special announcement. So we appreciate you coming down here for the last part of the work. I'm gonna read off and hopefully everyone in these sections completed your work. So you know you had your data work, and then you know you had your resolution work. And I was hearing at the end, like last night, why people were being late, certain places, they were like, we've been working on those resolutions. We had to do the resolutions. We couldn't be over here on time, over there on time, because we're working on resolutions. So I know a lot of it got done. But we have actually this year, 14 areas. And those areas, and if no one is here for those areas, we'll have to work to find those individuals that had some homework that need to be turned in. Okay, first area, and then I'll go through the areas, and then we'll come back, and then people from each of those topic areas will come up and then kind of give a report, and then give us a resolution. And then for those of us who are here, there's only two votes, well, really 3 votes. A pass, or do pass, not pass, and referred for more review. So we had youth, the youth corps. Did you come over with it? Okay. So youth is good. We had farm labor immigration. So nobody? Well, wait a minute. I had Rudy Ardondo was in there, Victor Quintana was in there, Mike Marsh was in there, Dennis Olson was in there, Valdemar Velasquez. Yes, sir. Oh, is he in the room? Is he in the room? Is Dennis Olson in the room? You go out there and grab him. Tell him he can't get away just yet. Okay, so we're good there. We had hemp cannabis. Did you get a resolution? Okay, all right. Okay, we had farm and ranch debt relief. We had Alfonso Abeda, Zach Duchenet, and Lisa Ramirez. Okay, did they have did they get a resolution? Antoinette was this, okay. I'm gonna put a question mark over there. Okay, we had financial support and National Infrastructure Bank. Those were 2 actual separate. So one topic was National Infrastructure Bank, and then the other half was financial support / farm credit. Do we have anyone from there? Antoinette? Okay. Then we had Native American Alliance Food Delivery System. That's Gloria. Is Gloria here? Was anybody here from that section? So we'll put a question, and that is Gloria. And then we had women in farming. Women in farming is ready. Well, we went past cannabis and you didn't say anything. No, well, I am. I need to know. No, not yet. And then we had regional and local farm systems. Oh, excuse me, food systems. Did we get a resolution in that section? Oh, Jaime Chavez? Who's representing? Okay, we had Shirley Romero, Dr. Pena, Stefan Templeton, Michael Roseberry, Jaime Chavez, Pedro Salomon. And I see Jaime Chavez, so we do have did we get a resolution in that section? Regional and local food systems. Okay. Okay, and then we had seed sovereignty certification. We have you have two? Okay. Oh, and I see Crabtree, there's Crabtree over there, so I know were you in that section? Okay, all right. Okay, and then we had USDA Customer Experience Focus Group. Okay, so do we want to have that as an ongoing? Okay, so that's ongoing. Okay. They're in the room. Okay, all right, okay. That means you got a voice in here. Yeah. Okay, addressing stress and suicide in rural farming, ranching communities. Okay, he is here. Okay, all right. Okay. Oh, identifying and addressing farmers and ranchers' financial needs development. You have that, okay, all right. Cannabis, hemp, deeper dive, you're gonna tie that in? Okay. You gotta watch those folks, boy, they be just trying to take over everything. You got, I'm telling you, because that is not new, but it is definitely an emerging industry, and that group is aggressive. Why you laughing? Oh, okay, all right. Okay, and then definitely. Okay. Okay. Last but not least, Board of Directors annual meeting, and we have some resolve. Is that going to be ongoing? Do we have a resolution? Yes, no, maybe so. Ongoing. Hello. What? Ongoing. Okay. All right. So everybody should have been preparing in their mind. So first up, who is presenting for Youth Corps? Please come on up, sir. Well, you can, but you're gonna tell us where we're at with it. Come up to the. Well, yeah, I'm just going by the order. Okay, all right.
Whoa. How does this thing work? Buenos dias, everybody. Good morning, everyone. Before I get started, I know we're short on time. I just wanted to thank everybody who made this event possible, especially the Congreso Organizing Committee and the NLFR. There's a lot of hard work and hours and meetings and Zoom calls and all the behind the scenes. And you guys are the hardcore long distance runners. So we appreciate everybody being here with us. And, I know everybody's probably tired and exhausted, but that's where champions are made. So we read, actually what I read, I'm losing track of time. I think it was on Thursday, was our youth resolution that was passed 2022. And so what we've done was we were able to meet with the Chicago youth and our New Mexico delegation of youth last night over dinner, talked about the concept of the Congreso and the importance of these resolutions. And so we came up with some things. We did think that there was a substantial amount of good literature, or if you will, in the first one, in this 2022 resolution. So what we did was refine it and have more action oriented language. So should I just read it? Is it appropriate just to read it out? Okay. And I apologize. I didn't know who to email to. Otherwise you guys could be reading with me, but I put the whereas in this year. So watch out. I'm in here. Whereas we believe that youth are foundational and paramount in the future of sustainable agricultural development in our community, country, and across the world. Whereas we will prioritize youth development by honoring and participating in intergenerational engagement in agriculture, ranching, food justice, and earth and water stewardship, and harness resources and develop programs that will create the next generation of leaders. Whereas we will support youth internships and programs during the summer related to agriculture, food justice, community health, entrepreneurship, and earth stewardship. Internships can be for various ages and across grade levels, P through 12 plus, and can be run through schools, nonprofits, and community organizations. Internships can work in school and community gardens and help support local family farms. We also believe that it is important to have next level opportunities where a youth might enter into an internship, and if they continue working and join again, that there are promotions and more positions of leadership available. That way we can work with our young people as they grow and acquire new skills, begin to facilitate programs with younger youth, and support them by creating career pathways and positions of leadership related to this work. Whereas we will create programs and internships throughout the year so youth aren't just working in the summer, but can continue to stay engaged and working throughout the year. Meaningful employment is so important, and a lot of our young people want jobs, and we need to create jobs in agriculture, ranching, and in food systems, education, and community health related work. Whereas we will create and cultivate resources for intercultural exchanges where youth from different towns, cities, regions, and countries can travel and work with other youth and adult allies in other areas to learn, grow, and professionally develop, as well as serve and learn from each other. One of the most influential experiences for our young people is to travel to another place and see people that are doing similar work and can learn and work together. Whereas we will partner with universities and community colleges to connect curriculum and courses to assisting and supporting local farmers and ranchers and community health and social justice organizations. Universities and community colleges have so many students and classes that we need to create positions to coordinate, develop resources, and create programs to ensure faculty and students are able to connect and either volunteer, get course credit, or eventually get degrees and certifications connected to farming and ranching, especially at universities and community colleges that don't typically work in agricultural related fields. Also, students and faculty need to be conducting beneficial community-based research to help assist farmers and ranchers in their work and development. Whereas we believe we need to support the creation of gardens, edible landscapes, and outdoor learning spaces in schools and in the community, School gardens can help lead the way in creating edible landscapes, producing food for families in need, growing and producing seeds, and helping train the next generation of farmers and ranchers. Schools can have a garden on their campus utilized by whomever is interested. They can have specific classes and curriculum connected to the garden, develop school garden resource teachers and garden elective and after-school programs, or even become STEAM agricultural science magnet schools. We need to work with schools, school boards, districts, and state legislatures to prioritize agricultural education in schools and in partnership with the community and create and implement statewide acequia and land grant curriculum. Whereas we recognize the need to work with national, state, county, and local entities and departments to create job positions and career pathways related to agricultural, farming, ranching, climate and environmental restoration, and creation of edible landscapes. Whereas we need to collaborate and work to create positions such as community garden coordinators at our city parks and with the Parks and Rec Department, or county positions that focus on youth, agriculture, and education, or statewide positions that could be coordinating and providing resources all across our state. This would allow for more career development and not just traditional farming and ranching occupations, but mixed in with our local county and state governments. Whereas we will support the movement to create schools based on agriculture, ranching, and earth, water, and environmental stewardship to help educate and inspire the youth to become leaders and to empower them to make positive social change. Yeah. We just got a couple more whereases, but I think I should move that up to where we're talking about schools. We could just flip that if you guys are okay with that. It was late. I'm so sorry. Whereas we will create, did I read this one? Whereas we will create agricultural science magnet schools and support schools that want to work to create these programs and infrastructure. Whereas we want these schools to be connected to indigenous and cultural land and water-based traditions and have indigenous and cultural ways of being be the foundation for the design and implementation of the school and all educational programming. Whereas we will honor different cultures and fight for racial equity by being inclusive of all cultures and ethnicities to build solidarity and support capacity building and development. Only 3 more whereases. Sorry, I might be getting kicked off here. We will have a youth component at the, whereas we will have a youth component at the 2023 Congreso and make it an integral component of the Congreso as we move forward, and create other youth conferences and gathering spaces to support leadership development and intercultural exchanges in our communities and across the world. Whereas youth will be included in the planning and designing of events and programming and authentically acknowledge and respect youth voice and youth presence. Whereas youth will learn about decolonial, anti-capitalist, relational, and collective horizontal governance structures, working towards constructing their own organizational strategies rooted in indigenous customs and traditions. Yeah, hey, let's write it. I'm typing. And that might be, would that constitute under the intercultural exchanges, or should we put that specifically in? I mean, we could, I mean, if everybody's okay, we could do one after the intercultural exchange. I'm sorry, after the intercultural exchanges, we could say, whereas we want to send youth delegations from across the country to DC to advocate for their programs and their communities. Is everybody okay if we add that in? Okay. And okay, I can remember. Maybe I should just type that in. Yeah, we need a motion. Okay, so Raquel, there's a motion. Oh, or is there discussion? Oh, I can't do any of that. Oh yeah, just get me off. I'm good.
No, don't go anywhere.
Oh, okay, I'll sit right here. I'm gonna type with.
Okay, I'm actually taking over Richard Moore's. Yeah, this is the motion has been moved and seconded. More discussion. Mr. Crabtree. Is there a cordless mic we can use so we're getting input from the floor? You want to repeat that so everybody can hear?
I wanted to answer to Doug's statement that NLFR is not responsible for the Chicago High School's curriculum, but that we could be responsible moving forward for the one that we build. So just wanted to make sure he understood. Thank you.
Any program that we support should be inclusive of appropriate agriculture, however you want to refer to that.
You get that? Appropriate agriculture. What?
Oh, yeah, I think it's a very good point made by the Organic Trade Association. So maybe that should be in the form of an addendum, or I don't know. I'm not quite sure, but you know,
He's
a
adding-
tag at the end,
he's
okay, with
adding it
regard
in.
to appropriate
Yeah, he's add-
agriculture.
Yeah, he's adding it in.
It is? Okay.
Yes, yes,
great.
sir. Okay, did you get all? Yeah, with the addendums, so it's been moved and seconded. Let's call for the question. All in favor? All opposed? All opposed? That's a do pass. Well, it's dangerous if you let those young people go out together to dinner, because they're not just having dinner, they were having a working dinner, obviously. And that was a big controversy, because they were like, we want to go out on the town. We were like, well, I don't know if they should go. Let them present and tell us why. And this is the reason why. They got together and they did some very serious work, because the Chicago group had to be at the airport at 5 o'clock this morning. So they engaged last night to do this. Okay, farm labor and immigration. Who is did you guys get Dennis Olson back? No? Rudy in the room? Who do you have? Rudy? Farm
I
labor
don't,
and immigration
I'm
is on deck. Are
not
you ready?
sure. I was. You wanna? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. No, well, you know, Michael had to leave. He had to leave yesterday. And Dennis, I don't know if if he was here, but I don't know if he's leaving early today. But there were several suggestions, and let me just kind of, one is in terms of addressing the labor shortage and looking in terms of providing a fair, equitable, and just immigration reform. And there is an ongoing committee that we put together that will not only look in terms of domestic immigration, but it's looking in terms of also the trade entities. And I also just spoke with AG, and he is also, because of the work that we do in California, so he has agreed to help us with both in terms of the immigration, and he has a I don't know if he's AG or is he gone? Yeah, well, anyway, but he has agreed to work with us in terms of the proposal, because we are trying to take the politics out of the immigration situation so that it doesn't get stuck in this political partisanship and opportunistic candidates that utilize the immigration as a means to get themselves reelected. We couldn't care less in terms of what that is in terms of the whatever political party. The thing is that we need to work on both in terms of HOA and to make sure that we protect and make sure that those that come here from as guest workers get treated fair, just, and get paid in accordance with the contractual agreement that the governments have indicated through the Department of Labor, State Department, et cetera. And to make it possible to make sure that we have those domestic workers that are undocumented to be able to be at the front of the line with regard to making sure that they have a path towards citizenship. Okay. So that is, I'm sorry, that's not in the form of a resolution, but that's what we're working on.
Okay, so I'm understanding then that will be ongoing. It'll be referred to a committee for further development. Rudy?
I apologize. I did not realize I had a duty to prepare from that session, but I have dug through the cobwebs and found a couple notes of resolutions that we discussed. If you'd like me to.
Is that under Farm Labor and Immigration? Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
Okay, so one of the resolutions was that, and I'll paraphrase because I don't have the exact language, but that any legislation dealing with waged labor rates must also assure that farmers earn a living wage. And the idea is we're trying to avoid the labor versus farm owner, that false dichotomy. A very specific resolution was that any federally funded housing should be available for use by H-2A workers. Apparently right now that's a limitation. So those are a couple specifics that I recall. Hope that's helpful.
Yeah, and I just want to say at this year's Congreso, just formally and publicly, that, you know, we stand in solidarity with all the farmers that marched recently in California for their legislative initiatives trying to support migrant farm workers. And so we would love to see something as the resolution develops where we can coordinate and unify nationally to support our migrant farm workers, value them, respect them, and not only provide housing, but like you're saying, provide livable wages and really be valued and celebrated in our country. I mean, they are feeding us, feeding the world, and they get treated so disrespectfully. They're not able to take any of the produce home. There's just so much poverty and inequities going on. And so I think it's just right. And I wanted to say just on the microphone that we love them, we support them, we're standing in solidarity. And even though they couldn't be here in this ballroom with us at this Congreso, that they are here with us in our hearts and in our minds. And we will fight, we will continue to fight for them and their families and future generations of migrant farm workers and farm workers. And thank you. Just wanted to say that.
Okay, if I'm clear, the points that have come to the floor will be culminated in further development. Is that correct? So that there'll be a forthcoming resolution. It'll be developed. What's the time frame? Okay, we are in the front. There's a comment that's saying a week from today, so within a 10-day period. Does that satisfy that? So the resolution is all of the points that we heard, that over the next 10 days, resolution development will be submitted. So is there a second? No, wait, okay. Is there a second? Been moved and seconded that the resolution that's being formed for farm labor and immigration will move forward. Is there any further discussion, any proposed amendment? Call for the question. All in favor? All opposed? Do pass. Cannabis hemp.
Happy Saturday. Is it Saturday or Sunday? I can't remember. We've been here so long. I think we started back in September, right? All right. So good morning, everybody. I'm Leonard Salgado. I was a part of the cannabis and hemp roundtable, I guess, if you will, sort of discussion as we develop the hemp and cannabis resolutions. When we're just to, for as a point of clarity, when we talk about hemp, we're talking about cannabis, and we're talking about cannabis, we're talking about hemp, right? So they're the same plant. Hold on. Get off the scale. Security. You're here. See that? Thank you. We're watching you, Eugene. Yeah, really. Holy smokes, well, I'll know better.
That was a part of the script for all those who weren't paying attention. Pay attention now.
Well, I knew it was a bad idea that me and Eugene should partake in a cannabis joint just before this, man. Right. So Eugene, you're cut off. You are cut off, brother. Right now, you ain't getting any more for the rest of the day. No more for you. We're cutting you off. God dang it. All right. Wow. Without any further ado, let me please read to you folks our hemp and cannabis resolutions. And it's well, and let me just say this as to preface this. Obviously, a lot of what we need to be paying attention to really relates to this upcoming farm bill, right? So there's some things in that farm bill that are certainly going to be, as far as language is concerned, that is going to be very pertinent to some of the resolutions that we're going to put forward. So let me just begin. It is really our goal to work with all hemp and cannabis stakeholders and state and federal agencies to, number one, minimize the role of law enforcement from the hemp regulatory process by eliminating background checks for hemp licensing. Okay. Number two, work to increase the THC levels for hemp from 0.3% to 1% to encourage regional seed breeding. Number three, redefine industrial hemp as just another commodity crop. Okay, that's very, very important. Support grain and fiber exemptions for hemp. Number five, formalize the regulatory process nationally so hemp producers don't have to deal with 50 state regulatory processes. Number six, eliminate the obstacles related to the crossing of hemp products across state lines. Believe it or not, folks, there's states that still will not allow hemp, which is fully legal, to cross into their state from another state. Eliminate the obstacles that disallow and or make it difficult to bank proceeds derived from the sale of hemp and related products, including the access to loans and federal grants for the hemp industry, including the banking for state licensed cannabis businesses. All right. Include true equity support programs such as worker-owned co-ops throughout the cannabis and hemp industries. Number nine, eliminate the obstacles that prohibit standard advertisements of hemp and cannabis products. For those of you that may not be aware, the traditional advertising options for hemp and cannabis are really prohibited, okay, in many states and in many media. Number 10, this is really important. Remove the definition of marijuana, okay? And if you look at any of the federal laws, you'll notice that marijuana is actually spelled instead of a J with an H. And that goes back to, the 1920s and 30s, folks, okay, when there was such a stigma and really racial overtones of cannabis, and the H was used just for additional emphasis to really give the word more of that more emphasis on the negative aspect of the word itself. So remove the definition of marijuana spelled with an H or a J from the Controlled Substance Act and remove marijuana and tetrahydrocannabinoids, which is THC, and cannabis sativa L from the DEA controlled substances. Okay. All right. So those are the 10 resolutions that we have put forth. Again, a lot of this is going to be tied into the farm bill. So it's very important that we monitor that and make sure that we do whatever we can to make sure that our voices are heard. So that's all that I have. Thank you. Mr. Pickett, are you gonna, you doing all right?
Yeah, I'm back up in the saddle.
Go ahead. Can
Oh,
take this?
Yes, sir. For submission, we have heard the resolution from Kemp Cannabis. Don't keep my ID. Is there a motion for acceptance? Well, you move for, when you make a motion, then it's open for discussion. There's a motion. There's a first for the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Floor mic.
Oh. Oh. Well, thank you. It was great. And, one thing that we've been talking here in New Mexico since we recently went to recreational is I don't know how else to say it, but the oppressive kind of capitalistic monopolizing regimes that are starting to surface. And, if there's some kind of language that we can have to ensure, one, that there's a chance for the little guy, and that we have programs to support mom and pop style shops, if you will. I'm just going to speak frankly, not that this is language is going to go in there, but just to make sense of what I'm saying. Because, looking at Colorado and the history of how recreational marijuana rolled out there, a lot of people of color are getting oppressed yet again in a gigantic industry that seems to be monopolized by, what I would call gabachos, but people with a lot of influence and money and power. So there's that issue. And I don't know if that was reflected in the 10, if somehow, I know New Mexico, it was really quick legislative session and there was a lot of discussion around that. And the other issue that got discussed here in New Mexico is water use. And so that I am a proponent of cannabis. I think it's a medicine given from God, but also our water is very scarce. And so, thinking about marijuana combining with the aquaponics systems to utilize less water in the production of cannabis. And I don't know how that looks, but we did want to bring those two issues up that maybe can get further refined. But those are two really pressing issues that we deal with here in New Mexico. And we want to support the growing industry of cannabis, but we want to do it in a mindful way. We want to do it in a sustainable ecological manner. And we want to do it where it's community and it's community supported and that people feel heard and that it's equitable as the industry grows. Thank you.
Are you requesting a friendly amendment or addendum? Mr. Salgado?
Travis, I definitely see where you're coming from. I would ask that maybe you and I could sit down and really formulate some language that pertains to that. I know that from what we're doing here in New Mexico, I think that the law, as it was written and approved, of course, and signed by the governor, really allowed for really anyone to get into the industry, from all parts of, from anywhere in the state. And so I think, and as I understand it, there's like 1,400 producer licenses that were issued and over 500 retail licenses that were issued in the state. And I've traveled a bit of the state, and I see smaller farmers, with 200 plants in production. And I've seen, you know, one of the largest production facilities in the state as well. But I've also, you know, come across a number of retailers that are mom and pop retailers, you know, from, you know, Anthony, New Mexico, right? Down south. So I've seen with my own eyes that certainly there's diversity, you know, in those operators as well, people of color, and I think it's working fairly well in our state. When I talk to other folks, say for instance in Virginia, that had representation here, they indicated to me that from a production standpoint, their state basically restricted it to 25 producers. 25 producers in the entire state. Obviously, those licenses probably did go to some of the wealthier and more influential people of non-color, let's put it, in those states. So, and every state, unfortunately, is different. You know, the laws are vastly different in across the country. So, anyway, long story, but I'd welcome, you know, us sitting down and talking about that. And as far as definitely as far as water goes, I mean, I think again, the small grows that I've seen, the small producers, I think we're, as an industry, we're really doing a super good job of really making every drop of water count. I mean, most of the smaller growers are hand watering their plants, right? So every ounce is pretty much going into that plant, unlike, you know, other agricultural products that we flood it, you know, we flood irrigate, right? So certainly a lot better use of water. But anyway, that's all that I have. Thank you. Stand right behind.
So it's been moved and seconded. There's further discussion. Are you comfortable with that friendly amendment, or is that gonna be further discussion? Mr. Salgado or Kathy? So are we reviewing that referring that for further discussion? Or you want to move forward as presented? Okay, you're gonna amend that for inclusion? So it's been moved and seconded. Is there a call for the question? With the friendly amendment being reviewed and inputted. No call for the question? Didn't hear you. Been a call for the question? All in favor? All in favor? All opposed? Do pass with the friendly amendment. Debt relief. Yeah, they're not here. Is Mr. Abeta in the room? We're gonna put yes. Yes, sir. You got a floor mic? Do we have a floor mic?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Go ahead.
I ask for that we support the debt relief and that we get involved in making sure that the money that is in the Inflation Reduction Act for debt relief is administered in a proper way. I think it's 5 point something billion dollars, and that we, you know, yeah, that we engage in making sure that the underserved communities are represented in that in a big way.
Would you
I wish I had
restate that?
written it down, but I thought somebody else was gonna offer a resolution.
So are we clear on that, we want to support the debt relief activity and ensure that that's going to be implemented in a timely fashion?
Yes. I'll add your words to it. I'll write it down, but I wasn't prepared for it, but since there was no one here, I thought we needed to do it.
So that's going to be referred to staff for development, right? So we're gonna hold that and just refer it to staff, and we're gonna develop the language. Will include what? Okay. Is everyone clear? Did everybody hear that? Laura Mike.
In the resolution will include in a whereas that there was debt relief that had passed about a year ago, and that it was blocked because of legislation. Otherwise, a lot of these farmers and ranchers would have had actually received debt relief already, and so it's been delayed.
Is there a motion to receive? It's been moved. Is there a second? Second, any further discussion? So it's been moved and seconded to support debt relief, and we'll have an addendum and a report from staff. All in favor? All in favor? All opposed? Do pass. Financial Support Infrastructure Bank. You have a resolution? Come on.
Good morning, everybody. Resolution of the National Latino Farmer and Rancher Trade Association Congreso. Whereas there is widely acknowledged, me and Stu Rosenblatt did this yesterday, so it's a little bit long. So give me a bit. Whereas there is a widely acknowledged infrastructure crisis in the nation, the American Society of Civil Engineers gave the country a C- in their 2021 report card and said that the cost of repairing 16 categories of infrastructure is approximately $6.1 trillion over 10 years. Over 2.6 trillion of that amount is unfunded. And with that current budget deficit running at 3 trillion this year, only 550 billion of new money has been proposed in the infrastructure spending bill currently under consideration. And whereas the 2.6 trillion shortfall in infrastructure money does not include financing of new projects like water management, to address drought in the Pacific and Southern agricultural states, extending broadband to rural and unserved communities, building a complete high-speed and passenger rail network across America, and expanding our electric grid to make it resilient and cyber secure. And whereas the rural community has been hit hard by a combination of massive flooding, fires, drought resulting from climate change, inaccessibility to broadband, and the collapse of the rural transportation and healthcare systems. These deficiencies are combined with falling farm prices, uncertain trade arrangements, and increasing monopolization of farm output at the top. McDonald's, Archer, Daniels, Midland, Tyson Foods, etc., leading to increased poverty at the bottom of the chain of food producers. And whereas the hardship visited upon the average farmer and rural communities has led to the growing social demoralization. Many rural areas are hard hit by a combination of underemployment, drug addiction, suicides, and a result of despair and hopelessness in their future. And whereas there is a growing movement to return to the national policy of economic growth and optimism, a centerpiece of the program is the National Infrastructure Bank, created under the Congressional House Bill HR 3339, capitalized with no new federal deficient spending, taxes, or debts, and in the tradition of George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and Franklin Roosevelt. Public infrastructure banks have been instituted 4 times in our history, built much of the infrastructure we take for granted, and helped drive the development of our nation. However, most projects have outlived their useful lifespan. A new national infrastructure bank would invest at least $5 trillion into our crumbling infrastructure in both urban and rural communities. And whereas the National Infrastructure Bank could build all the new infrastructure, which is sorely needed in rural America, from broadband to the provision of water management systems and repairing bridges for the effective and goods of the market. It could help finance new schools, hospitals, drinking water facilities, transportation, and systems, while bringing the current infrastructure up to the state of good repair. And whereas the new infrastructure program must be coupled with new legislation restoring parting pricing of agriculture and fair trade policies that would benefit from domestic agriculture producers and our overseas partners, now therefore be resolved that the National Latino Farm and Ranch Trade Association meeting in Albuquerque hereby calls the Congress of the United States to enact a new national infrastructure bank as set out for HR 3339, which will build our rural and urban areas equally and lift the nation out of despair and economic hard times. And be further resolved, the copies of the resolution will be delivered to all the members of the Congress and the President of the United States. That's it, guys. Thank you.
Well, that was your present for being a facilitator of that group. Mr. Arredondo, so are you clear and happy with the distribution to Congress? Okay. Oh, here comes the floor mic. Here comes the floor mic.
And what I would like to propose as a part of our next step is to make sure that both the House and the Senate Agriculture Committee get a copy of these resolutions once they are completed, and that we consider having a fly-in to make this, hand deliver this to our elected officials, both the House and the Senate, making sure that there's the Senate Agriculture Committee, the chairman in particular, Debbie Stabenow from Michigan, to be hand delivered by somebody from her state,
to emphasize the need for this. Secondly, in the Senate, in the House of Representative, the chairman, David Scott, to also hand deliver to them in our next visit to Washington, DC.
Do you think Mr. Rosenblatt would be comfortable with that addendum?
Yes, we're members of the coalition, and this is part of our effort that we have discussed at length. So, and I will talk to Mr. Rosenblatt. I don't think he's going to have any objections to it. Thank you.
Do we have a motion to support? Motion to support, right here in the front. Any further discussion? There's a second, then first and seconded. Call for the question. It's been moved, seconded, call for the question. All in favor? All opposed? Do pass. Native American Alliance Food Delivery System. Gloria Castillo in the house. Lionel Haskey. Jennifer Muskrat. Governor Concello. You got your hand up? No? Okay, we will table that for representation. Women in farming.
Good morning, guys. Kathy's supposed to be up here with me, but so this is our first year, but there's no buts. This is our first year. So we were very direct. And Leonard, did he leave? Because my email didn't come through. I apologize. Uh-oh. Oh, Leonard, can I borrow your laptop? It didn't come through on mine. While we're waiting for that, I just want to thank Eugene and Rudy and the host committee. It's been really great. Eugene kind of makes fun of me because he says, I came on last year and now I'm all in the mix of it. But I just want to let you know I'm not going anywhere either. I know. I didn't take that. Really, Travis, you can let him blame me for that.
No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
No, but it's just been an honor and we're excited about what's going on. And I've been a part of a lot of organizations and different things like that. And it's just nice to see when you give to something and how much I've gotten back from this organization and the partnerships and the friendships. And when you come together with this Congreso and working through it and, the arguments that we have at the tables, and then you have an opportunity to do a healing circle. So there's just nothing like this. And I'm really proud to be just a part of it. I'm honored to be here. So, so for Women in Farming 2022 Congress resolutions, we propose that we place 5 women on advisory committees within the USDA. 22 committees are available, including an equity commission for women in agriculture. We're also requesting that, we're proposing that the NLFR create and fund a cohort to address education and outreach for specifically women in farming, cultural relevant training, loans and development programs, and funding for these women to be engaged in advisory committees. And we would like to have a designated staff from the NLFR for communications and coordination, specifically for women's programs, utilized with the USDA funding for technical support. So out of that technical support, where we're proposing that we specifically use a designated staff for women. I know. So those are our resolutions. Can I add something? Yeah. So, as women, one of the things that we discussed is that Kathy and I are sitting here kind of laughing. We wanted to be specific. We wanted to propose 3 to 4 things. We wanted to be direct. We wanted to have it metric and goal oriented. And we're hearing all of these wonderful resolutions and we like, shit, we didn't ask for enough. Sorry, excuse me. But that's what we as women do. And so we're like, oh, we should have asked for more. But that's part of the education. That's part of the cohort. That's what we're committed to so that we recognize. And that was one of the things that, you know, Dr. Ramirez said at the USDA. She said, don't underscore yourselves. So while we're here, while we're committed, the cohort that we're proposing, you know, we already have women and we have members that are committed to that want to work nationally and locally and regionally. So we don't expect to just come here and do the work for the Congreso and then leave the work to the staff. We have memberships that are committed to making this happen. So I just want to let you guys know that.
Do I have a motion to accept? Raise your hand high. Okay. Been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Call for the question. Been called for the question. All in favor? All in favor? All opposed? Do pass. Congratulations. Now I see what Leno and Luke felt like. Keep getting notes to add to the agenda. And you got to figure it out as you move forward. Okay. Regional and local food systems. I have Shirley Romero, Dr. Pena, Stefan Templeton, Michael Roseberry, Jaime Chavez, I do see you, and Pedro. Jaime, you the last one standing as the smoke clears. You gotta come up and do you have a resolution? Oh, Mike, no. Jaime, you gotta come forward. Shoot from the hip.
Okay, so we can go ahead and handle. On food systems, I wasn't actually in that one, but people were assigned. And I do believe that Lawrence has from the New Mexico Food and Agricultural Policy Council 2 resolutions that he needs to read onto the record. Okay, I'll read it if you want. And I think maybe there may be more coming, Lawrence. Okay, and I'll follow up with the committee because I do understand we have 10 days to get this together. So we have so far New Mexico Food, Farm and Hunger Initiative, okay, as relates to food systems. Whereas the New Mexico legislature supported an increase in funding. Excuse me? No. Okay, I'm going to continue. Whereas the New Mexico legislature supported an increase in funding for the New Mexico Food, Farm, and Hunger Initiative because of the immense need, the 2022 state legislature, and whereas the need has increased because of the disasters of drought and fire have made the need even more difficult to meet. Therefore, be it resolved that National Latino Farmers and Ranchers support the efforts of the New Mexico Food and Agricultural Policy Council and the Governor's Office to increase the funding of the New Mexico Food, Farm, and Hunger Initiative. That's at about the $43 million level, of which we expect an increase in funds this year. And it directly applies to some operations that we have up in the north, particularly in Taos, Nuevo Mexico, where we just received $1.4 million for a food production center. And I think that's the new wave, the new initiatives, if you will, is that if you want to be sovereign, you need to know how to grow your own food, and then tie that into definitely into the development of production, aggregation centers and what have you, that can actually really produce on the local level to be able to deal with childhood hunger, nutrition, etc. So, and I do think that there may be still some addendums coming forward. I'm not sure, but I think we need to follow up with the committee, and I think we're committed to do that as well.
Okay, that's what we have for now. Is there a motion to receive? Been moved and seconded. With the addendum processing moving forward.
Go ahead and put the line on the agenda that we will plug in. But everything that's on the, I think, on the record should be reflected.
So it's been moved and seconded to receive as presented. Call for the question. All in favor? All in favor? Any opposed? Do pass. We'll go back to seed sovereignty.
We made a lot of progress on this one. Interesting question. What is it in a seed? What is it about a seed? Why seed? Because it forms the very basis of life itself. It's just like us, okay, in this cyclical universe. I'm going to read what we have with regard to declarations at this point. And it was very dynamic because our inputs were direct from the pueblos of New Mexico, 19 pueblos. And particularly at Isleta and Tezuque, where seed saving efforts are occurring based on historical and traditional agriculture, native agriculture. So I want to advance these declarations to the body. We center our declarations around Pueblo leadership. Language used to describe our plant relatives and seeds should reflect our Holy Family as children. Seed sovereignty resolution at the forefront. Rights that sovereign communities have the right to own, care for, and protect seeds in order to move forward with clarity, to move forward together with this mutual understanding. Resolve that the New Mexico Chile Act be found unjust and repealed. We resolve that the New Mexico Chile Act be exposed as to why heritage seed savers have problems with this type of legislation. Who decides what Chile is New Mexico? True. We resolve that seed saving is a universal right. This is from the Organic Trade Association. We resolve that seed saving is a universal right, and any agreement between parties that infringe that right should be considered illegitimate. We resolve that the right to sow and save seeds should be protected in law, policy, and practice. We resolve that land that is not in production is sacred and protected from contamination, degradation, and unsustainable practices. Land theft, land conversion, and can be applied to protecting air, water, and land from contaminants. We resolve that organic certification should be provided at no cost to the producer. Indigenous rights of nature we resolve that the earth and all its ecosystems as a living being with inalienable rights to exist, to live free of cruel treatment, to maintain vital processes necessary for the harmonious balance that supports all life. Such laws also recognize the authority of people, communities, and governments to defend those rights. Innovative legal structures for a thriving future. When the rights of ecosystems are recognized, we can more effectively balance the needs and well-being of all life within the context of existing legal systems, just as we eventually do between individuals, corporations, and other right-bearing entities. Sustainable democracy and community self-determination supports the inclusion of rights of nature that are enforced on a local level. Then now I want to, if I can read into the record of the, hold on. There it is. This is a long one, okay? That was just our introduction. And it was also, this is a historical document. It is called the Declaration of Seed Sovereignty, a living document for New Mexico, March 11th, 2006, of which we want this Congreso to adopt it. This is the most progressive document on indigenous seed, probably maybe even in the world, because the language from this is being used at the world level to deal with this, including United Nations. Bear with me. Environmental and food justice. 1. Whereas our ability to grow food is the culmination of countless generations of sowing and harvesting seeds, and those seeds are the continuation of an unbroken line from our ancestors to us and to our children and grandchildren. 2. Whereas our ancestors developed a relationship with plants that allowed their cultivation for food and medicine, and that has been a central element of our culture and our survival for millennia in regions throughout the world. Whereas the concurrent development of cultures in Eurasia, Africa, and the Americas resulted in a plethora of food and crop types, including grains such as maize and wheat, legumes such as beans and lentils, fruits such as squash and chile, vegetables such as spinach and those of the cabbage family, and roots such as potatoes and turnips. Whereas these foods and crops though developed independently of each other, came together in New Mexico with the meeting of Spanish, Mexican, and Native American cultures to create a unique and diverse indigenous agricultural system and land-based culture. Whereas just as our families are attracted to our homes, our seeds learn to thrive in their place of cultivation by developing a relationship with the soil, water, agricultural practices, ceremonies, prayers, thereby giving seeds a sacred place in our families and communities. Whereas the way in which seeds become attached to a place make them native seeds, also known as land races, and makes them an important element of the generational memory of our communities. 7. Whereas the continued nurturing of native seeds or land races has provided a basis to the community coming together for communal work such as cleaning acequias and preparing fields, as well in ceremonies, prayers, and blessings, thereby binding our community traditions and cultures together. Whereas the practices embodied in working the land and water and caring for seeds provides the basis for our respectful connection to the earth with each other. 9. Whereas our practices in caring for native seeds, land races, and growing crops provide for much of our traditional diet and result in our ability to feed ourselves with healthy food that is culturally and spiritually significant. 10. Whereas clean air, soil, water, and landscapes have been essential elements in the development and nurturing of seeds, as well as in the harvesting of wild plants, and that these elements of air, land, and water have been contaminated to certain degrees. 11. Whereas corporate seed industries have created a technology that takes the genetic material from a foreign species and inserts it into a land race and is known as genetically engineered or transgenic crops. Whereas seed corporations patent the seeds, genetics, and or processes used in the manipulation of land races, and have gone so far as to patent other wild plants or the properties contained in the plants. 13. Whereas GE crops have escaped into the environment with mice in Oaxaca, Mexico, and canola in Canada, and crossed into native seed and wild plants. Whereas organic farmers have been sued by Seed Corporation when these patent genetic strains have been identified in farmers' crops, even though the farmers were unable to see or stop pollen from genetically engineered crops from blowing over the landscape and into the fields, thus contaminating the farmers' crops. Whereas the effect of the technology of the environment of human health when consumed is not fully understood. Whereas the seed industry refuses to label GE seeds and food products containing GE ingredients. 17. Whereas the pervasiveness of GE crops in our area cannot then be fully known due to the lack of labeling, and therefore carries the potential for genetic pollution of our land races. 18. Whereas countries such as Japan, England, and countries in Africa have refused genetically modified foods and prohibit the introduction of GE crops on their land because of their own unknown health effects. 19. Whereas indigenous cultures around the world are the originators, developers, and owners of the original genetic material used in the genetic engineering of crops by corporations today. 20. Whereas the declaration must be a living, acceptable document that can be amended as needed in response to rapidly changing GE technology that brings about other potential assaults to seeds and our culture. 21. Be it resolved by the traditional farmers of Indo-Hispano and Native American ancestry of current day northern New Mexico collectively and internationally seek to continue the seed-saving traditions of our ancestors and maintain the land races that are indigenous to the region of northern New Mexico. Be it further resolved that we seek to encourage and engage youth in the continuation of the traditions of growing traditional foods, sharing scarce water resources, sharing seeds, and celebrating our harvests. Be it further resolved that we believe cooperative ownership claims of land race, crop, genomes, and patent law represent a legal framework for the justification of the possession and destruction of stolen cultural property. 25. Be it further resolved that we object to the seed industry's refusal to label seeds or products containing GE technology and ingredients, and demand all genetically modified seeds and foods containing GE ingredients in the state of New Mexico to be labeled as such. 26. Be it further resolved that we consider genetic modification and the potential contamination of our land races by GE technology a continuation of genocide upon indigenous people as the malicious and sacrilegious acts towards our ancestry, culture, and future generations. 27. Be it further resolved that we object to the cultivation of GE seeds in general, but especially within the range of our traditional agricultural systems that can lead to the contamination of our seeds, wild plants, traditional foods, and cultural property. 28. Be it further resolved that we will work with each other, local, tribal, and state governments to create zones that will be free of genetically engineered and transgenic organisms. 29. Be it further resolved that we will also work together to address other environmental abuses that contaminate our air, soil, and water quality that certainly affects our health, the health of our seeds and agriculture, and the health of future generations. Be it further resolved that the undersigned traditional farmers representing various acequia, Pueblo, tribal, and surrounding communities will create, support, and collaborate towards projects and programs focused on revitalization of food traditions, agriculture, and seed saving and sharing. This was drafted by the Traditional Native American Farmers Association and the New Mexico Acequia Association in January, February, and March of 2006. And we ask that this body adopt these measures and that we continue in the struggle to preserve our genoplasm and our genetic inheritance.
I'm gonna recommend, because there's actually two sections that you have. Because you have one that came out that you can forward to us. That came out of the seed sovereignty workshop. Okay, so that was one. No, I'm saying there was one on that section. And then the first one that was presented, I watched you read it. You need to forward that to us. And then two, there's a 29-point declaration. So that's kind of separate. So you want us to. No, it's together. Well, both of them can't be together because. They're separate resolutions. Right, but one will be voted on, and then the other, in terms of the first one? No, yeah. So so there's like a 29-point declaration that we want to support. So that's kind of separate. So we have two. So the first one, which came out of the workshop. Okay, that's the first one that will be making an action on, which is pretty clear. Okay. Do we have a motion to receive? Beg your pardon? What OTA, what it just all up in. It's been moved. Do I have a second? Any further discussion? Call for the question. Call for the question. All in favor? All in favor? All opposed? So do pass from seed sovereignty. Is Sandra in the room? Okay, thank you. In terms of how we do certain things, be very clear that we need to have a relationship with the, what was the name, what's the name of the group? DNAPA? We do have a relationship. No. Right, but so National Latinos, we need to move forward and making a recommendation, because when we look at stuff, we look at the detail of the work. So there are 29 points in that work that National Latinos staff, we're going to have to take a deep dive to understand the work so that we develop a relationship to support. So.
Association.
That's right. Okay, no, go ahead.
She just said it was also co-drafted with the New Mexico Acequia Association. And I just wanted to say on Rudy's recommendation, when these get finalized, then we're going to present them in DC, that we invite the Traditional Native American Farmers Association and members of the, the New Mexico Acequia Association staff to be present as we present the resolutions, and then in support of the declaration that they could present the declaration in its entirety as well. Just a recommendation.
Okay, so that becomes a friendly amendment.
Yeah.
To the motion. So now we're working on the second motion, which involves the declaration. So in doing that, when we look at it as National Latinos, it's the how we're going to do it. So now you have two organizations that we're going to have to interact with. So that's,
You just have the interaction from the Pueblos themselves, that those Pueblo authority that respond to this.
right. So now that we're going, okay, go ahead.
I'm just letting Eugene know that even though this is a declaration that was passed back then, that the session that we had was with the forefront and the leadership of the Pueblos anyhow, okay? And that means, okay, because we're dealing with sovereign and autonomous communities, okay? So we need to know what that is, okay, anytime you engage with them. And that's what we just did.
Right. So in following up on that statement, when you expand the we, then we have a detailed way that we're gonna do that.
However you do it is fine.
Okay, so in doing that, we're referring it over to develop an MOU with those three organizations. Because now when you're talking about a fly-in to DC, okay, you know, it's the how. And the how has to be financed. You know, so we have to, you know, it gets kind of like when you get into the weeds of how we're gonna do that, it comes over to staff, but we have to move that forward in the detail. You know, so that's some interorganizational relationship. So we do that through memorandums of understanding so that everyone has a full realization of how that moves forward. So the reason I was like, is Sandra in the room? And I see her taking notes, that when we get to that, then these organizations, and we'll get a point person, because I don't know all the point people, but in each of those organizations, there's got to be someone that we're going to be in contact with to work out the details.
We do.
Okay, so that would be you. Okay, so we'll work that out behind. Okay, so so is everyone clear on the 29-point acceptance of the declaration? Is there any further discussion on that? So is there a motion to receive? Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? Do pass. No, we got enough. Okay, well, let me go down to 10, because I'm following this agenda, and I'll put you down over here, and I'll come back to you. No. We gotta move. I'm gonna call you back.
No problem.
So get that formalized. Okay, all right. USDA Customer Service Experience Group. Sandra, you have to speak for that. Okay. Number 11, addressing stress and suicide in rural farming, ranching, and communities. Can you address that?
My God. I was gonna say, are you okay? And I'm like, wait, stay away from me. I don't know. Move over a little bit. Good morning. While this is not a resolution per se, there's a lot of outreach work to be done to support producers with mental health issues. We are in a conversation with the University of Tennessee Farsan Extension Program. And the purpose of the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistant Network, or Farsan program, is to establish a network that connects individuals who are engaged in farming, ranching, and other agricultural related occupations to stress assistance programs. So
we are connected to this Southern Regional Agricultural Assistance Network, and they would like to work closely with us and other cooperators to establish a hotline for mental health assistance for farm workers, farmers, and ranchers in a case management style, not just a call-in number and then we forget about the person and whatever, right? It's to follow through. So as well as working with Farsan, there's $500,000 that were allocated to Puerto Rico. So Farsan allocates 500, like $500,000 to the states for support with suicide prevention and assistance. And we have been approached by them to support them with that allocation for Puerto Rico because there's been some black hole issues, like governmental internal issues, and we're being tapped to support there. So those are the two conversation points.
Okay, so the resolve with that would be to accept and support. Is that correct, Sandra? Okay, and you would be, and you would be the lead person. Oh, okay. Yes, okay. Okay, the design of that would be to accept and support and move forward. Do I have a motion to receive? Moved and seconded. Call for the question. All in support? All opposed? Do pass. Okay, we got a lot of people that are in motion towards the flights and airports, okay? If you are at the Marriott, then we're gonna have to move you, or shuttle you to the Marriott or straight to the airport. If you're from here, the shuttle from Isleta will take you to the airport. So we wanted to make that announcement and believe Stefan, we still have you and Gabriel, or are you out of commission? Okay, all right. All right, so we have space for two. So anybody that's needing to go to the airport for an earlier flight, the shuttle is en route. No takers. All right, okay. Oh, man. Oh, down to number 12, which is very important. Identifying and addressing farmers and ranchers' financial needs and development. Are you coming in for that? Oh, okay.
I just would like to present Larry Garcia from NowCab, Executive Director.
Good morning, buenos dias. As she told you, I'm Larry Garcia. I'm the Chief Lending Officer for the National Association for Latino Community Asset Builders. So we're a membership organization of about 200 nonprofits serving Latinos in economic development throughout the country. We're a national organization, and we're also a national CDFI intermediary lender. So we fund the funders that actually make the loans. So I was asked by Rudy and Mr. Pickett to come out, and I thank them for that, to identify financial needs for small farmers. And that's frankly, that's something that we overlooked because we were so intent on meeting the needs of urban areas. And we do have a rural program, but it's very limited. But coming to this conference has shown me that we need to shift our policies to make sure that the small underserved farmers, our financial needs are being met also, as far as we can do it. So we're a community development financial institution that is very flexible in the financing, so we can develop niche products for certain groups that need the financing. And our target market is Latinos, and also other target markets, which could include anybody that's underserved, right? Any population or community that's underserved. And again, we thank Rudy and Mr. Pickett for allowing us to come here. We did have a small session, but for me, um, it was very worthwhile because it did identify the need, and it'll allow us to formulate an initiative in partnership with NLFR, and also assist NLFR to become a CDFI. So that's one of our goals. Yeah, and Sandro is going to. We did come up with some resolutions, and Sandra's going to go over those.
Thank you, Larry. And thank you, Mario. Thank you for being here. So whereas agricultural lending is very political and USDA has been lagging following 2022 resolution, identify specific needs of our Latino and historically discriminated against stakeholders, develop a loan fund. Also, from those needs, identify financial products that are not hard to manage to build capacity over time, take the necessary steps to become a CDFI 501c, and as a member of NALCAP, meet and collaborate with them to make this happen.
As we start whittling down, where you at? As the detail of the work. So we're very clear on that. Thank you. So that's going to be you and Larry, Angela, Deanna. Was Raul involved with that? Yes. Okay, so a contingency. Okay. Everyone has heard the resolution. Do I have a motion to receive? Do I have a second? Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded to receive this motion on the development of the financial institution. Very much needed, very much needed, very much needed. And then you identify the infrastructure of the working group, so the work's gonna get done. Call for the question. All in favor? All in favor? All opposed? Do pass. On the deeper dive for cannabis and hemp, I believe that was incorporated into the motion. Okay. So no 13, 14. Is Rudy in the room? Rudy in the room? Someone would call Rudy Ardondo into the room because we're down to board of directors. Or did you want to speak to that? Lawrence? Well, that conservation is, it's going to be like number 15. Number 15, because somebody did pass a note. And then we have an additional section from Mr. Ardondo. Do we have any resolution from the board? You want a floor mic? Do we have a floor mic? Thank you. Yeah. And are you gonna have, you wanna do the, do you wanna do this one? Or you wanna do it now? Yes. We need to get. So you wanna do that?
Okay. Would you, what is the wording that you want? Yes. What I like to propose is that we have our annual board meeting and board activity and report out be a part of the Congreso, along with the board elections, to ensure that we have a board that is committed to the mission of the organization, which is to protect, preserve, and to serve. We're going to be sending out an oath for the board of directors to ensure that they are following and they agree with regard to our mission. That's primary. So do I hear a motion?
And that meeting will be October 26th through the 28th of 2023. So mark your calendar and we will be working towards that with that resolve. Do we have a motion to receive and accept? Motion, do we have a second? Moved and seconded. Call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Do pass. Okay, where's James Powers? James Powers, Lawrence Gallegos. This is the resolution on conservation and regeneration. It's two-sided. We'll have the man who presented and passed the note in his own handwriting. If you would come to the mic first, and Lawrence, if you would accompany him.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jamie Powers. I'm Director of Ag Outreach with Rural Investment to Protect Our Environment. I want to thank Eugene, Rudy, and everybody else for your hospitality. We are fortunate and honored to have National Latino Farmers and Ranchers as a member of our steering committee, alongside the likes of the Georgia Organics Organization, National Black Farmers Association, National Black Growers Council, some farmers unions, and a bunch of commodity groups from across the country, representing in total well over 300,000 growers. And what we're trying to do is shape a new conservation program at USDA that compensates producers for their voluntary stewardship activities, leading to more sustainable farms and their communities, that will benefit producers by paying not based on the cost of the practices, but on the value of the environmental benefits that are being created. So that's the spirit of the work that we are doing. And we're thinking about carbon, water, soil health, habitat, et cetera. And so I've got a very short resolution that Rudy suggested I come up and offer to the members. And I'll read that for you now for your consideration. And of course, I'll be here for any questions that come up. So the resolution would read, National Latino Farmers and Ranchers resolves that a portion of new funds appropriated by Congress for climate smart agriculture should be invested in a new conservation program offering a simple enrollment process that enables producers, including early adopters, to earn equitable payments above implementation costs economic losses during transition to new practices, and future climate policy costs. Thank you. Thank you.
Lawrence, did you have, is that a second piece? That's a second piece? Okay, so we have a two-part resolution. What you just heard, you repeat that.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and repeat that resolution. National Latino Farmers and Ranchers resolves that a portion of new funds appropriated by Congress for climate smart agriculture should be invested in a new conservation program offering a simple enrollment process that enables producers, including early adopters, to earn equitable payments above implementation costs, economic losses during transition to new practices, and future climate policy costs.
The reason I asked for a second reading is because of how it's an open end. Doesn't, which is good, because it doesn't establish a price. It leaves it open. Yeah. Is there, do we have a floor mic up here? Yeah, right here. Put your hand up.
One of the challenges that producers face in this universe is a concept of additionality. And in all of the schemes that I'm aware of at this point, innovative producers who have already adopted and implemented practices that are beneficial to climate and to soil are penalized, because if you've already adopted it, you're not eligible for any funding to implement it. And I would suggest that any resolution acknowledge that challenge and provide for funding for the early adopters that have already implemented practices and are practicing beneficial operations.
Can we view that as a friendly amendment? Yeah.
Thank you for that. And one part in here, just want to see if this is sufficient or if we should amend it further. Right in the middle, offering a simple enrollment process that enables producers, including early adopters, to earn those payments. Is that a sufficient statement, or should we strengthen that?
I think it has to address the term additionality, and that we will pay for, you know, any program that this would support should pay for practices already implemented and in place, not only newly adopted practices.
So if I adjust this at the end to say, to earn equitable payments above implementation costs, economic losses during transition to new practices, and future climate policy costs without requiring additional acres or practices, would that address that concern? Okay. Thank you for the feedback.
Oh, yes. Friendly amendment.
So I'll read the entire resolution with the friendly amendment. National Latino Farmers and Ranchers resolves that a portion of new funds appropriated by Congress for climate smart agriculture should be invested in a new conservation program offering a simple enrollment process that enables producers, including early adopters, to earn equitable payments above implementation costs, economic losses during transition to new practices,
and future climate policy costs without requiring additional acres or practices.
I just have a question if this includes like ecosystem services. Because I don't hear language in there that would like include like best efficient water practices or for ditch irrigators. There's other ecosystem services that people provide, or for example, like native plants, pollinator plants for wildlife. Usually we call those ecosystem services. I don't hear that language in there. I don't know how that would fit in, but I would like to see that included.
So for example, if I added a piece in here, and I should mention that all of the things that we're discussing that are coming up in these questions are things that we work on regularly in the organization. So it's very much in line with our work. So should be invested in a new conservation program based on the value of ecosystem services. Yeah. Offering a simple enrollment process that enables, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, with the friendly amendments, do I have a motion to receive? It's been moved and seconded to receive this resolution. Call for the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Do pass. And I think we are at are we at our final? Yes, sir. This is the last one. Lawrence on conservation.
This is a resolution that applies here in New Mexico, and I'll just read it. It's New Mexico Conservation Funding. Whereas National Latino Farmers and Ranchers passed the resolution during the 2021 Congreso to support conservation funding to assist farmers and ranchers in meeting the required non-federal matching funds requirement for USDA programs. And whereas Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham and the New Mexico legislature failed to fund a method to provide a conservation fund to leverage federal USDA funding for conservation programs. And whereas there has been an increase in support from the New Mexico Governor's Office and the agriculture and conservation communities for conservation funding because of the increase in federal funding through the Inflation Reduction Act and the disasters of drought and wildfire that we experienced in 2022. Therefore, be it resolved, the National Latino Farmers and Ranchers support the effort of the Governor's Office and the legislators who are working to establish a conservation trust fund to help meet the non-federal matching requirements for USDA programs in New Mexico.
Take that deep breath. You gotta watch us cowboys. We be trying to jump and dive and hop up on the horse and out, not saddle, not checking anything, just jump up there, you know. Conservation. So you're gonna submit that, you know how to submit it. As read on the conservation fund support. Do I hear a motion to accept? Do I have a second? You can't second your own motion. Do we have a second? Been moved and seconded to accept the motion on the supporting the governor's office and the conservation fund development, correct? Any discussion? Here comes the mic. Here comes the floor mic.
Would you accept an amendment to add a phrase and similar efforts in other states?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
there's been a move for a friendly amendment. Mr. Gallegos is gonna be added and other, what was it? Similar efforts in other states, that means a national projection. You good with that? Okay, with the friendly amendment, do we have a motion to accept? Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded with the friendly amendment. All in favor? Any opposed? Do pass. So we have completed our working agenda for our next 12 months. So all of us know what we're gonna be working on, plenty of work. So at 11 o'clock, we're at 11 o'clock. So all of you in the room who are a part of what we're doing, which everybody here is a part of that, if you would move to the tables in the front, because we're gonna do a debriefing from 11 to 12. Then we'll clear out, we'll hug and kiss everybody and say thank you very much, and probably see you later in the day and all during the week to work out the rest of these details. So if you would move up so we can do our debriefing, and then we will be concluded. So come on down, move on up to these 3 tables in the front. Because this is gonna do, anybody that's in here, you got an idea of what it is. So just come on down and you know you're a part of it. Lady in the hat, lady in the hat. Yes, you over there, Diana. Come on down to these 3 tables right here. No, I don't, oh, yes. Arnold Trujillo, please come on down. This is not it. There's nothing else up there. Arnold Trujillo, come on down to the front, please. What do we have left? What happened to Juan and, okay. All right, so he knows it. Come on down to these 3 tables in the front. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. So did everyone get their limited edition gift? Limited edition gift. Limited edition gifts.